Hello, everyone. So uh, we're we're here at the most exciting part where everybody is still here, really focused on finance, no, and finance in the context of a breakthrough of energy investments in the Philippines, given the 2040 target of 50% RE generation goal. So to give context, that means around 12 hours a day, power generation is RE. That's the long and short of it. Is this really possible? No. If ever we're talking about finance, that's what we'll try to talk about a little bit more in this panel. But then again, I think we'll try to see the bounds of how we can make the 50% RE goal possible. If earlier by 2040, better, no. So I have with me a very good set of distinguished guests. So I'll go through some questions, and it'll be up for the panelists on where they can respond. I'll go from Mr. James first, to the left. So my first question for today is, do you think that the 50% 2040 target is real and possible? What needs to happen for this to be real?
I think if we apply the way let's put it this way, the way it's currently going, I think we probably won't reach it. But I think that the industry overall is also very noisy, let's put it that way. Noisy enough that there's enough pressure that there will be significant changes made in the next few years. It's unrealistic to think months, but I guess in the next few years there will probably be significant changes. I think we established that renewable energy, and apart from being green, is economic and makes sense from a fundamental economic and finance point of view. So the funding, I think, is overall is there. I think there are roadblocks that hinder mass scale development, but I think those are being addressed and have been addressed and are still being addressed, and I think will continue to be addressed in the next 2 to 3 years.
I think it's possible, but it's going to be very difficult. If from a developer perspective, if you ask any developer, all they're looking for is non-recourse project finance, which is very hard to come by in the Philippines. I mean, I think only these established players and long-term players or long-standing players would have easy access to it. So I think maybe if the banks could relax it a little bit, if you are, let's say, a foreign player buying in a project that's in RTB stage already, it's your first time in the market, but you have a strong balance sheet at home, and if you can use that against it on a truly non-recourse, meaning no corporate guarantees and all these things, just on the project level. If the banks can do that, then I think it would really have the flood of projects that we really need. I think that's been a roadblock for a long time. The banks here are pretty conservative. That's a good thing, I guess, overall for the economy, but not really on a project basis. But there are other avenues. Having said that, there are other avenues. I've spoken to a lot of new players coming in here who want to invest even on a pure balance sheet basis. So there are players like that who are willing to do that as well. So it is possible, but it's going to require a lot of finance and a lot of different kinds of finance, not just the traditional avenues that we usually have.
Definitely agree, Ari and James. And since Ari mentioned about the non-traditional sources of financing, please allow me to share at least our experience as ACEN, because we were fortunate enough to tap the capital markets, particularly the issuance of green bonds, which enabled us to really accelerate our growth, not just in the Philippines, but also outside of the Philippines. So because of the green bonds that we issued, we were able to equity finance many of our projects. We issued the bonds at the holdco level and pushed down the equity, the funds, down to our SPVs. So hopefully the window for green bonds will open once again. so that it can be tapped again by more and more developers. Another opportunity, of course, are the multilaterals who are pushing ESG as a concern and as a priority area. So the likes of ADB and IFC are also sources of friendly lending and financing to a lot of RE developers.
Thank you. Thank you for the inputs. And I want to add that for context, green bonds, it's something that everybody can do. I think there's a lot of mystery for people, particularly once they start hearing about these words, green bonds. In reality, as long as your use of proceeds are aligned with green investments like RE projects, and your money doesn't go into brown investments, which are more dirty technologies, then that can qualify as a green bond. And even here in the Philippines, we already have SEC guidelines on how to issue green bonds. And once you comply with that, then it's pretty straightforward. You can apply with it with the SEC. Your bonds can already qualify, you know. So you just have to talk to your bankers about it. But that's, as Attorney Doji mentioned, that's already a very, very real option for everybody. I also recognize the issues of the regulations. I think that one really needs a strong push. Also on the banker side, particularly on the multilaterals and developmental bankers, they are already there to support. The question is how many people they have to handle the applications. So that's their biggest issue. On the commercial bankers, what I was surprised was we're slowly seeing the appetite grow. So I think last year, DBP already came out with its merchant facility for solar projects. So that for me is a first, because it's the first time wherein I heard the bank go 100% merchant. Traditionally, it's only 70-80% contracted, and this is the first time wherein it's a government bank telling you, hey, I can go 100% WSM.
Which bank is this?
DBP,
Oh.
Development Bank of the Philippines.
But this is on a 50-50, no?
Yes. I mean, the DE is not exciting. So you have to look for a second set of MES for your DE to be optimal, to go back to 70-30. But at least you can get pure
It's
merchant.
there. Yeah, it's
Yeah, because before, banks will not finance merchant plants
Mm-hmm.
at all.
At
A
all.
50-50 is a lot of improvement already.
Yeah.
I agree, completely agree.
And I think it opens up other banks to, take the risk as well and say, well, if they're doing it, maybe we'll come in, maybe we'll push 60-40, and then I think that's pretty exciting development.
It is. And the great thing also, aside from the green investors on the bond market, you also have a lot of impact investors coming in already. And the great thing with the Philippines is, even if we don't have PPAs, even if we don't have 25-year PPAs, 20-year PPAs, we have a mechanism to show that PPAs can get renewed, and there's a clear WSM market that's transparent and liquid. So that one's a good development. Maybe we talked about regulations a lot in this event, and I won't hammer on it any more than the other panels have. Then maybe my next question, and again, we've dabbled around this already a little bit, but do you think the appetites of the banks have changed, the banks and the equity investors, given that, in theory, RE prices are cheaper, yes, but gone are the days of the fit. You have to now compete with the companies that can give 4 to 5 pesos per kilowatt hour of RE on an 800, 500 megawatt GGAP bidding. So, given that competitive landscape, so do you think the appetites of the banks and investors are still there?
I definitely think so. Investors are a lot. Equity investors are a lot. Banks, you'd obviously want them to be faster than they are moving at this point. But I think from a debt perspective, with larger projects, larger projects, project financing is definitely available in the Philippines. There's no question about that. I think the more problematic sector would be the rooftop sector, because that's where a lot of banks are just not interested in. Whether it's from an outright purchase point of view, or if you're a developer and you're developing a large rooftop solar base and you want to sell energy to private off-takers. But in order to get the interest of the bank, you have to develop quite a large portfolio to even gauge enough interest. I think a good solution, or what would be great, is if banks could support companies and even on a residential level to provide bank loans to adopt solar PV systems for their homes. In terms of regulation, I think net metering is not. I mean, it's good, but I think if net metering, instead of working as a credit, but was paid in cash for the energy that was exported to the grid, I think that would provide a lot more security also for banks as a way of getting their money back. But I don't know if there's much to be done on the net metering side. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that the banks are just generally conservative in the Philippines. There is a little bit of progress, as Matthew mentioned, with the DBP and merchant finance. No? But on the equity side, I think it's a little bit more aggressive, especially now that the 60/40 law has been lifted on these energy projects as far as renewables. No? I've seen a lot of foreign investors, the first-time investor who wants to come in and really wants to buy out projects, or even originate and develop by themselves and really take that full risk. No? So that's what I'm seeing on the equity side. But for the banks, it's pretty much the same.
Well, I think the banks have improved a lot in terms of understanding the market and the needs. Before, it was really hard to explain to them what feed-in tariff is, what's PPA, convincing them that even with FIT, it is bankable. Now they understand the nuances. They can better appreciate why we need to build more power plants, even on a merchant basis. And it somehow opened up. Good thing to hear about DBP. But then a lot of banks are still not open to it. Ari mentioned they're very conservative. But one thing that's working towards RE is the fact that ESG considerations have pushed the banks to publicly announce that they will no longer finance coal assets. So if they are no longer allowed to finance coal assets, then who do they lend to? The RE developers. There's a new market out there. And I really hope that with the improvement in prices, solar panels, energy storage systems, that the banks will continue to be more and more open and go beyond the 50%, go 60, 70. We need all the financing we can get if we are to really reach our targets by 2030 and 2040.
Right. This is good, no? Because I think banks and investors really have a role to play if we were to hit this target. The big players, they can only do so much, and they can only attack as much projects as they can, no? And at the end of the day, the smaller parts of the grid have to play their role. So as you know, the Philippines is split across different grids. The biggest grid being the Luzon grid with the Meralco service area, but then even outside Meralco, you have underserved areas. No? So, in your perspective, how can we make sure that the smaller ECs and DUs also participate in reaching the 2040 RE target? What kinds of push should the government or other stakeholders give for us to reach this side of the market? Because I think even if we saturate the entire Luzon grid, we won't hit 50% if we don't service the other parts of the grid.
I think I'd like to hear from Dodgy here on this.
Well, Ari and I had a short discussion on this before this panel discussion. Because we really have to improve the ability of the smaller DUs and ECs to pay. we have to support them in their efforts to collect so that they will be in a position to make timely payments for the electricity consumption that they're making. The government should actually support them on that one, but not to the extent of subsidizing. But to the extent that subsidies are needed just to encourage more private supply of electricity to them so that their respective end users will be able to enjoy uninterrupted power supply, then so be it as a short-term solution. Unfortunately, Matt, it's kind of hard to really come up now with a solution to that issue because the government really will have to do something there to improve and to police these ECs and DUs.
Yes, so this is clear, no? At the end of the day, it's gonna be a question on the ability to pay. I mean, it's not because we want money, but because at the end of the day, we also have to pay our suppliers, our investors, Ari.
Yeah, I've seen a change in the attitudes of the smaller ECs and DUs lately. No, what I've seen is that they're actually coming up to the developers now, like me, and saying, "Can we do a 10 megawatt? We have identified a substation here. Here's the land, we've identified it, and we want you to do a 10 megawatt or a 15 megawatt so we can comply to the subscribed demand of our, for the law." But the issue that I see from a developer perspective is that when you do these small ECs and DUs, number one, as Doji mentioned, you have to check all these credit ratings that they have. Are they bankable or not? Do they pay on time? And also from a development point of view is that you have to go through CSP. You have to go through CSP, and then you have to go through ERC, and then you're down the line 3 years in developing and you still don't have a project. So this is the challenge, no? I think the DOE is doing well with these auctions, sort of like amalgamating all these demand and then putting them in. So that's, I think, a big help already. But individually, I think there has been a change in the smaller ECs and DUs, which I think is positive.
Yes, yes. So I think just a shameless plug on our end. So we also do these kinds of studies for ECs and DUs, and we've identified, and we also agree that I think there's strong support needed, particularly for ECs and DUs that are not optimally rated to be bankable. I mean, there are different mechanics available right now, and I think one way that the government is trying to attack this problem is on the issue of hybridization. So the last thing we heard is the government is really looking hard on hybridization, and is open to suggestions on how to tackle that problem. Remember, I don't know if you remember your power bills. The part of your power bills is that UCME, and that's supposed to subsidize all the diesel power generated in the SPUGs in these ECs and DUs. And if the private sector can be able to provide 24/7 or at least partial power at 735, I think that's the latest SAGR. If the private sector can provide the 735 contract for X megawatts blended, then I think there's a game. That's one. And I think based on our studies, at least on a small basis, a 12 to 18-hour solar BESS project can already sustain 735. Another way is also to the panelists' point, we should try to explore other avenues of support. If not from government sector directly, multilaterals, they're always happy to help. If not through guarantees, they can provide technical advisory programs for specific ECs and DUs on how to improve collection efficiency. Another way that ECs and DUs can be helped is through just improving their organizational structures on how they're run. So different ways of helping ECs and DUs, but at the end of the day, we have to pull them in as part of the renewable energy solution. I think that's the, wait a minute. On my last question, what kind of support do the C&I and residential RE need for it to grow faster than what's happening right now. I think this one is something that's very important. I remember in one of the other panels, it was raised that there are a lot of roofs not being used, and we're talking to some of our clients, and the way that they attack target areas is they open Google Maps. Oh, Matt, I see 20 roofs. I can compute easily 500 kilowatts. That's our client base. So that's a big untapped client, the client base or target market. You can imagine the entire Philippines. You can check that way, But going back, what kind of support does C&I and our residential RE need for it to grow faster?
Yeah, so I think with it's funny because the large scale solar has a lot of financing but very tough regulations, and then you have the rooftop side that has simpler regulations but almost no financing. Yeah, I think there it really comes down to the banks being more willing to invest in or provide debt for rooftop projects. Whether it's a 200 kilowatt, 300 kilowatt project. I mean, I can understand why. I mean, you're doing a lot of due diligence for a small project, and it's almost the same amount of time for a few $1 million projects. But I think it's still a segment that's very important, and I think the rooftop solar segment in general is very strong. I mean, you have other countries in the U.S. where they're doing more rooftop projects than utility scale projects, and I think Philippines is lagging in that area. Yeah, it really comes down to, one is financing, two is also again regulations, but it's simpler there, and also for own use. So we have obviously two sides: development side and then the own use side. And the own use, I think, is very underserved from a financing point of view.
Just to add to what James was saying, I think rooftops, whether residential or commercial, should be treated as real estate for solar, meaning it should be utilized. So to get on Matt's analogy, if you have 500 kilowatt worth of roofs there, if we have 20 roofs, I think we should put solar on it. The issue would be is where does this energy go? So if we can lift the cap on the net metering cap that we have, and then if every rooftop can export, so let's say my demand, I own a factory, my demand is 1 mega, but I have a rooftop worth of 2 mega. I should be able to export at any time at a price that I can negotiate with the DU directly. And when I do negotiate with the DU, there should be a special consideration. I wouldn't say a tariff or anything, but a special consideration or a fast track way of negotiating this, because this is something that the cities can use. This is something that everybody can use internally. So we don't have to, one of the biggest challenges of utility scale solar is looking for land in the provinces, But if you look at rooftops as land, there's a lot of land in Metro Manila already, if you look at it that way, So if we utilize it as some sort of real estate where we can maximize it, then I think there's a way to do that and achieve it.
Definitely agree with that, Ari. Rooftops are underutilized as real estate for solar. I mentioned this earlier in an earlier panel where I said land is a finite resource, but there is another resource here, the rooftops. We should take advantage of that one. And again, to mention, we have dams, areas with surface, water surface area which we can develop. So I think it's time to think beyond the traditional land and think about those areas that are not utilized right now. Rooftop is one thing. It's been there, the regulations or lack thereof, that's really one of the challenges there. Lifting the 100 kilowatt limitation for net metering is another thing that can be done so that we can encourage more people to engage in net metering. So yeah, it's one thing that we really have to take a look at, and the regulators will need to look at it again.
This is noted. Also, as part of our work, we also try to discuss these points with regulators and investors. And again, these points are very helpful for trying to make sure that we hit this 50% target by 2040. So I think that's the end of our panel for today. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists for their time and for everybody who stayed behind for this panel. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.